This meeting is called to order, and I'll ask, are we online this time?
No.
No?
And
Okay.
I'm still not sure, something about the branding.
Okay.
I'm still not sure what the holdup is.
All right.
Everything is hooked up to my phone.
Oh, it is, good.
All right.
I have you know that. We'll get that sorted out. I think it was like how it's listed and who controls and it coming up. There was a question too, do we want to broadcast live versus it be recorded and just, it'll be posted to a YouTube, but we can do it live and then it's recorded to YouTube, or just have it recorded and it's uploaded to YouTube.
Probably both. That'd be
You know,
good.
yeah,
If
both fine.
possible,
Yeah,
yeah.
is it?
I know what the
People can see it
logistics
real
is
time.
behind the live or not. I don't know how much logistics is behind it.
I don't think it's not much involved, so that was just a question. Yeah, I know before, there's not like a cost difference, but back when we were getting estimates, there was potentially, and it's not an issue. No.
Based on our website, we just have a link, it clicks on the link and goes to all the YouTube channels.
Yeah, we'll probably set it up as a link right from the website
Okay.
to go to it. But yeah, it was just a question, do we do it live? And then, of course, the recorded version, or just a recorded version uploaded? So that was one of the questions. So
Well, I'd be
if you're
okay
good
if
with
it was
live,
just
then we'll
recorded.
do that. And then there was a couple other things we needed to just
What
clarify.
meetings are we gonna televise?
Well, right now, it's just town council meeting.
Not the agenda.
Well, we can do both, the agenda.
I remember that.
Yeah, oh, between
Does
those
it go
two.
in the planning board or anything else?
We haven't decided yet. I mean, staff-wise, we're not opposed to that. I would think we can do that for planning board too. I mean, but back to town council, agenda review and regular meeting, I would think we do both.
I wouldn't be opposed to planning board and Parks and Rec board as well, if it's feasible.
Yeah, and I know Parks and Rec doesn't meet here. Planning board does, and they've got a more defined, well, Parks and Rec has a defined number, but it's a bigger body than they do meet here. There's more presentations,
Sure.
and interaction with presenters. But we can look into those others as well.
Yeah, and sorry to sidetrack us right out of the gate. We'll go on to public comment if there is any. All righty, seeing none, moving on to updates from council if there are any. Any updates? Okay. We'll just move on. We'll go to item number 4. Next week, Mr. Lou Blue Eyes will be here with the Asheville Regional Airport to give us an update. So we'll look forward to that. And we'll hop into item number 5, the summer report on citizen survey conducted by poll call. Mr. Manager.
I'm happy to go into that. If it's okay, could we go to manager comments on one of the items that Ben Cathy's
Yeah.
from McGill Associates?
Yeah, I'm
if
sorry.
that's
Yeah,
okay?
you did mention that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's all right. And then Ben can leave and we'll come right
Sure.
back to it if that's okay. So one of the things was and he's here about our tennis, basketball, pickleball court project. So there's a couple things we were going to talk to you about. One of them was about the drainage layout on the site. And based on our pre-construction conference meeting, they were making some tweaks to the way the water slopes off of there. And it has some potential impact. We could try and do it as is, but because of some of that feedback we had at the pre-construction conference, I don't want to jump too far ahead of Ben's comments on this. It led to a potential tweak to the storm drainage element there on kind of the south east corner, I guess, of the site, and some other parts of it. And then there was one other thing he was going to talk to you about on the basketball court layout, a possible suggestion for an improvement. before we get too far ahead here. So with that, and this just came together really quickly as Ben was contacting me late last week about some of these things. So I'll turn it over to Ben.
Is that showing up?
Oh,
somewhere?
we didn't turn on the system. Yeah, she did now.
It's fine.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot he was gonna display it on here. You've got the one sketch, but there's another sketch he was gonna show. Looks like it's on.
How high up is this gonna be compared to what the grade is now?
Not very. I mean, I love, that's one of the things I would love to do is get it higher, but since we have a no rise condition, we have to keep it pretty close.
Well, if we're gonna keep it low and the potential in the past, we have seen flooding in that area, is there anything special we can or should do with the fencing around it so that when crap blows into it, maybe the bottom is made to rip out or something so the stuff can go through instead of, because before the problem we've had on some of the fencing is when all the garbage comes in, when it floods, it hits the fence and it creates like a dam, and then as the wind and more stuff comes, it just pushes the whole fence over.
Yeah, once it gets blocked, then it gets loaded, it increases the load on it. Without some type of gate, that would be a little bit of probably a homemade solution a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, I can check and see if, I'll see if the fence manufacturer knows something I don't. I mean, that's
I mean,
possible.
maybe they have some straps along the bottom that are made to break under a certain pressure or something, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we're allowed to get that no rise is they have, the state has now determined that a fence will at some point, if it
It'll
becomes
go
that big
over.
of a block, that it will break or move or fail, or we never would get a no
Yeah.
rise there. But I'll check with them, but I'm not aware of a quick option besides a bunch of gates.
Right.
And then they get pricey, it looks strange, you know, it's like, what, no.
Yeah.
So, but I'll check it too. All right, so y'all can see my screen now, or is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right, the first issue that Mark was discussing was grading of the court. Now, it will be, before we had it broken down the middle to go to each side and to our left so that we could get the water off the court quickly.
Right.
That is for the tennis community, that was a no-no on the way that court.
Varying
was
slope.
That peaked in the middle was the least desirable choice. So if we had to, we had to, but we could find a different way. So this way, we will now be the most advantageous approach, which is a slope across from right to left or left to right. So we will have 1% from pickleball all the way to basketball. On here, you can see that arrow right there. But what that helped us with is now I am not, it took, when I say load, it took volume of water off of this ditch that I wasn't a fan. It was flatter than I wanted it to be anyway. So now we've and we've checked our no rise, we were able to raise this up a tenth is what we had to do to get. So now that we have a smaller volume of water, I'm not as worried. We can grade from the court to the asphalt track. Just let that small area flow to the track. And then, but this, we still have a small area to the right side of the court here that will be ponding. Well, that area is basically flat, so
Yeah.
it's already ponding, but we don't want to put the courts in there this fall, and then now it's going to be like, create a pond. So we need to bring that down to the south, which would hit this stretch of storm drain into right here where the cursor was planned. We would need to add this inlet over to here, which would capture this ditch in the immediate project. And then in the future, if the demand is there, and we add those pickleball courts right here, another set or tennis, whatever the demand is, then we're gonna create another pond again right here, and this would already be there to drain that area.
So right now, with what you've got drawn here, it's just going down the side of the courts into a swale over to the drain by the basketball court? Or-
It's going down, like you just said, it's going down this.
Right.
This small swell, you won't hardly see it, it'll be so flat still, and then we'll have an inlet right here.
Oh, okay.
Like a grate, that's what you're talking about, the inlet?
Is the area to the left,
Right here.
were you, to the left of the basketball court?
Right here.
Are we still bearing in mind that that would be our extension if we decided to add more courts?
No, actually, the extension would go over this direction right here.
I thought I heard you say that, but for some reason I was thinking that we were extending to the left instead of the right.
Yeah, no, it's over to the right, and that is
Okay.
already, that's taken into account from a stormwater perspective.
Right.
The bioretention cells cover enough impervious area that we won't have to go back on stormwater if those are desired later.
Okay.
The grading would be a little bit of grading, and, you know, it would be it's pretty close to being ready. But the big kicker there is that the contractor's he's not priced all of that out, but it's approximately a $10,000 add for that pipe and those 3 boxes. And that's taken into, there's a little bit of credit for the ditch, it's not a clean pipe. So that's the negative portion of this.
Which would require a budget amendment if you wanted to make that modification to try and accommodate these things. And so that's, if you are, we probably need to move on it fairly quickly, like putting something on the agenda for next week to address that. My only trepidation a little bit on this and talking to Ben was there's staging out there, but they haven't started construction yet. You know, there's always some unforeseen once you get under, not always, but I mean, there's potential for an unforeseen, something that could drive up cost on there. I mean, we don't anticipate it. It's fairly straightforward. There shouldn't be a lot of variables if something that goes wrong, but the kink has been, now that they're pointing out this sloping on the courts and trying to make that better, accommodate it, you know, doing this different drainage improvement. So that was the only concern. I mean, it's not a big change. I don't want to minimize 10,000. 10,000 is 10,000. But we probably should amend, do a budget amendment to appropriate more money to do it. So, we can see if we can scramble to put that on there for Monday, if y'all are in agreement with that sort of thing.
That sounds like we probably need to.
Was this what we're calling extra drainage, was it unforeseen? I mean, were you already mapping out your drainage on the original project?
We could have done this from the beginning. It was, there again, we're prioritizing drainage, flood study, and court usage. And in the original design, the drainage was ahead of the court usage. And now when we flipped to prioritize that court usage, it was like, well, okay, now this is less needed. That ditch is not needed as much, so I would rather get rid of it. Before, I didn't want to do it before, we met to talk about that, and it's like, that was back to, we're very flat, and I can't create enough grade because of my flood permit, so it's just tougher than, people say, oh, it's hard to grade when it's real steep.
It's just an
It's hard to
improved,
grade when it's real flat.
it's an improved change, one that would be better.
I don't, so yeah, we could have done this from day one, but.
But we, at the time, we weren't thinking about the tennis community either. Yeah, they don't like a,
We were only
Multi-level
1%,
court.
and, yeah, so it was, like I said, it was,
so is 1%, is that a good enough grade to have it drain good?
well, yes and no. You know, it is hard, it's dang near impossible to place asphalt at 1%. But if you go steeper, so that it makes life easier for them, then you're
Affecting the sport?
the playability on the surface gets a little bit wonky.
Flatness.
So it's one of those that you're just caught between a rock and a hard place. It's like, you have to, and there's that surfacing that goes on after the paving can help manage minor puddles as well. So they have a little bit of filler. It's just a tough, it's a difficult installation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We may want to consider, I was over at a brand-new tennis court, pickleball courts over in Pittsburgh about 2 months ago. And every court had one of these, it looked something like a broom, but it was a roller that was made to, if somebody comes to play after the rain has stopped, you can just roll the water right off the court.
I've seen
Is it
those.
like a
Almost like a
roller?
squeegee.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Yeah, and then there will be, you know, especially over time, as soon as
Yeah,
it
there'll be a
starts
little
to settle
spots.
a little bit,
Mhm.
there will be. But that's the way, the only place you're not going to do that is if you have something indoors. that you
Yeah,
can't worry about.
yeah.
And you can put trench drains, trench drains are just very expensive. That's one of the, you know, we could stick a trench drain along the side of one of these. You have to have a box and take it to, and then like I said, they're just one of the more expensive methods of drainage.
And this came about, these issues at the pre-construction that, so that's what kind of led to this, which we had a week and a half ago, roughly.
Just out of curiosity, who was it that spoke up about the tennis players not liking it?
It was one of the general contractors, one of their subcontractors on the surfacing is Wayland, I can't remember their full name, but they're court surface.
They've seen that issue before?
Yeah.
That's what they specialize in, is these types of court installation.
He said he saw one that was north of here, I think it was at New Boone or somewhere, that he said he saw one, he said it's just a little bit weaker, and it's like, really, can you tell? And he said, you can tell. So it's like, with it being less than 1%, you know, he was like, it does make a difference, so.
I would think so.
It,
Yeah, I think you'd be able to tell.
yeah, so that's,
So we tried to do one plane
Yes.
instead
Right.
of across.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. Kathy? And if not, I'm sorry.
If you don't, there was one other thing on the basketball layout that I wanted to bring up.
Oh, sure.
all right, on the, I couldn't connect them, I don't know if I have the original, let me see if I got this.
Ooh, that's busy, Ben.
I know. That's what my mind does.
I bet.
So originally, on basketball, we had the 2 half courts, and then, I can't remember, you know, we wanted to add these extra goals just for some, you know, people to shoot around.
Four goals, yeah, correct.
Yeah.
When we got the shot drawing on our goals, and we started actually laying those out, we were having to spread the courts apart a little bit, so our basketball operating mechanism and stuff on the back of it don't hit. So it forced these goals a little closer than they are now. So it got to the point where, and it's just a few feet, but when a few feet can matter when if you're talking about playing a half-court game here, and I'm probably talking to you more as somebody that enjoys basketball and wants to play basketball than I am even here at this point. If we're playing a half-court game here, and, you know, you check it up a few feet behind the three-point line typically, and it depends on how aggressive you're getting on, if we're going to get up in somebody or what, but it takes up some space. So if I'm playing a competitive game or somewhat competitive game, and somebody shows up to shoot on this goal and they start bouncing balls over
Yeah.
here, you're gonna be like, oh man, give us some space here, So, as that came up, we were cranking up what, can we do this better? So, I'll just hit close that.
Probably should have printed one out too.
This is, so with this, we would lose one goal, but we would have 3 complete half courts. Which feels, and they've all got their own space, nobody's gonna be infringing upon the other. This feels like it's going to operate better to me, and ultimately give you, it's addition by subtraction. We have one less goal, but I think you have the completely 3 dedicated courts that you'll be able to use all the time. The one issue you talked about was not having a full court, and that was not the intent of this layout. So but it does it produces a very short court down here. We can separate that if we want to force them to be half courts. We can leave that, put some temporary signage up, or whatever we want to do. So that's a point of discussion. The first thing is, I know multiple goals and multiple opportunities for people to use them was an important item. But is everybody okay to drop the 3 goals and have them all striped?
I
have
don't
a-
understand, because you said 2 was too tight, and now you put 3 in, and it's.
No, 4 was too tight.
4, hit 4.
We had 4
Oh,
on the original.
I got
See,
you.
there's,
I got you.
There's goals right up here
I got you.
and right up
So
here.
far from the edge.
Yeah.
So is it possible to make those 2 half courts a full court and then do that 1 partial court?
Basically, it's a mini full court under this suggested change, and then a half court above it. So the
No,
bottom half.
he's still got the basketballs in the middle of it, instead of on the ends.
Yeah, no,
There's-
Or you mean here could
Yeah.
be a full court. if we took
Yeah,
the fence out.
the bottom half, those 2 courts, that's a full court. If you want to play full court, or you can do half court on it. The upper
Oh,
one
I
would
see.
only be for half court. If you see the
So-
way the basketball goal
Uh-huh.
is aligned down there, and it's 70 feet? Did you
So
say?
that is a full court.
we
Yeah,
could-
Gotcha.
kind of like
Yeah,
an
yeah, yeah.
elementary school size full court.
Yeah, and elementary, the smallest published court is an elementary court, which they are narrow. This one is full width, but the length of an elementary court is 74, which is plenty enough for me to run in my current age. I kind of like 74. I think all of them are 74 feet. But this one's 70. Now, we might be able to get, like I said, we can look at a little bit of room at the back of these 2. These goals are going to back up to each other to operate the crane. On those will back up to each other right here. So, and then this one to the sidewalk. But we can check, see if we can get that to 74 or 72, we'd let you know if we could look and see what we could get. But I guess we talked about at one point not having full court. So, like I said, that's one issue, and then is it okay for the 3 versus 4, which I do think doable. And I talked to Greg today, he felt like, he agreed with that little bit of the awkwardness of how close that goal is. So, I do feel like this will give 3 distinct areas that people feel comfortable, if it's a mom or dad and 1 kid, they're gonna feel comfortable out there, and they're not gonna feel like they're like infringing upon or.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I almost like this more. I think I do like this more.
So where are you proposing fencing, between the 2 top pieces and nothing between the 2 bottom ones?
Well, that would be a discussion point, would be, do we want them separated, or do we want the option of a full court?
Personally, I got mixed feelings on that, because a small group of people can take over 2 courts running back and forth, and then the bats can play. But that's only one
And
big
that's
issue.
where, I guess that's where I was, and then, but, you know, on Greg's perspective, I thought, you know, like in summer camp, I could see.
Extra music for basketball games.
8-year-olds, you know, if you lower the goal down to 7 feet, I could see 8-year-olds having a ball out there. So it's, and removable ones are a little tricky outside. They have them, but, you know, you don't have, you can't keep water out of them.
You can't what?
Can't keep the water out of those
Oh,
sockets.
okay. Because I was just wondering, is there a way that you can do some sort of, you know, fence or something when you want it, and then when you want the full court, you have the full court?
And I know in gyms, of course, they have, you know, for volleyball nets and things, that's what they use. Like South Steel, those exterior ones, to make sure that they have good ones that will get completely flush. So we don't, you know, we don't need anything on the surface to trip people if you play full court, so.
It just there's nothing wrong with the original design up there, but, I mean, Ben was pointing out, I mean, you play basketball and pick up games. I can appreciate this because I used to do that too, and if you're playing a full court game and you got side baskets, it's really hard for people to use those. Or if you're doing a half court and someone's got a goal near that, the ball, and they're just shooting on their own, bouncing towards it.
And it's bouncing in between the games and
Yeah,
whatnot,
and
yeah.
it's like, you don't want to shoot on it because you don't want to disturb them. Or
Yeah.
you do, and then you're making them mad, the people playing, because the ball bounces in there once in a while, or, so I can appreciate that, because I had the same dilemma when I used to play basketball more regularly, but.
I don't see no problem with 3 courts like this. It's laid out quite well.
I kind of like the idea of a half court and a full court.
Yeah.
I do too.
All right, well, and the good news, this one does have a cherry on top, so I think this will actually be a little less expensive, so.
There you go.
Can we write that down? That you said that? That you said that?
It'll be $10,000 less expensive.
So it'll be about 10,000 less, so we can just flush it out in a day?
Didn't say that.
Yeah, I like this layout.
So then you'll put a fence between the upper two and take the fence out of the lower one?
Yes. Yeah, we'll just leave it.
We-
Leave it open.
And we should probably, so in the pre-construction conference meeting, the pickleball tennis court subcontractor also mentioned, and it was a good suggestion or thing to bring up, on the pickleball court side, there's fencing we've got in between them, and he was saying, based on the number of feet, that that could be tight. And so there's 2 things you run into. Someone could like that it's tighter than normal because it stops the ball if it goes over there.
Right.
Or you get people are frustrated because it's a little too confined and they can't go and, reach for the ball going. So, I mean, we were going to take the fencing out in between so that they had more room to move and not be running into a fence and be able to play little, I don't know if aggressive's the right word, more latitude to move to get a shot. So that was one thing, and it gets a credit. It really doesn't diminish as far as we can tell from, it should be an enhancement to play, yeah.
And that, I guess that's more just an opinion.
Right.
If this were at a retirement community, it might be better off to leave them, I guess. But since we could have some aggressive people that do want that space, like I said, it was really kind of came down to the choice and the people in the room that day. We said, let's take them out. We actually shifted the courts in just a little bit so that you have a little more room to the outside fence, which we can't take away. And then the 2 courts basically just share that space.
Gotcha.
So it gives them, the players, a little more room to maneuver, like, going to the side to get a shot back in.
I just don't know that much about
Great.
pickleball, but is that common to not have a fence in the
There's
middle?
both.
Okay.
We've seen both options, and it's,
You're talking about the fence vertically between court one and court two?
These two right here, this little
Okay.
section and this section, this was left open in case you want to put a bench or something there, but yeah, it's like I say, you can look up examples and see, you can see both where it's just court, and then you have one that are separated, so.
Was it gonna be a short fence or?
Yeah, those are gonna be short.
Yeah,
They
short.
were just gonna be like,
Yeah.
so you still feel open when you're standing there,
Yeah.
you feel like you're in a cage, but it just stopped the lower.
And it was recommended to take it out?
Yeah, well, that was just, that was kind of brought up, it was like, hey, lots of people don't put them, but like I said, there's plenty of examples where they do use.
The dilemma that we ran into on the, on considering taking them out was there's only so many feet on the edge there,
Right.
and it gets tight if you're, if you're moving laterally there.
It's 5 feet.
Yeah,
In
it's
the
a-
original layout, it would be 5 feet from your out of bounds.
Well, that was gonna be my next question. Is there any room to have bench spots?
Yeah, that's what the dark strips are.
Okay.
They're right at the net.
Okay.
So if we take those fences out of the middle, you're gonna move the courts a little closer together,
Yeah.
just to give you a little bit more room on the outside? Okay, that sounds
Edge
good.
counter.
I think we moved to 6.5 on the outer edges and 7 feet shared between the two.
Is this regulation size?
On the court itself.
Yeah,
Yeah. it is.
okay.
The distance between them can vary a lot, I guess, so that's the thing.
Yeah, and that's back to,
Yeah.
well, 4
I think it was just saying you could leave the fence out and you come back later if you need to. And
That's what I was thinking.
if there's
That's
a
a good
problem
point.
if the pickleballers aren't playing nicely, then put a fence in between them. You know?
Either add it later.
Or they're frustrated with the ball rolling
Yeah,
away,
I
not
mean-
stopping, or that's the thing.
If it's
when
just asphalt,
someone
they
might want-
drill it and put it in a fence base, right?
They could, and then on part, you'd have to shift the court where you don't draw back.
Oh, yeah.
If it
That's
shifted.
what you're saying.
Or it would be very narrow in the middle, then you'd only end up with,
Yeah.
3.5 or something, so.
Could you leave it the same and just don't put the fence in? Just, you still lose that edge, but you'd have the option of putting the fence in later.
You could do, but that, you can restripe too, it would just be, at that point, it would be some paint. They just have to cover the existing lines and move, so as long as you know that that would have to go with it.
Yeah, I like giving the extra foot to the outside.
I think it makes sense to take the fence out.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, that would accredited as well. So we do have a few credits. I don't want to represent them like 10,000.
Come on now. Stretch it out.
There will be some.
So this will put, what we're doing will be the courts, all the lining and the benches and the fences, that's all in the price?
Yes.
We're doing now?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
And
good.
then that was the echo scheme. I mean, if, that's something we could choose, but,
They seem like a good color scheme for, I mean, I don't know what the opinions of everybody out, but it does contrast nicely. I think the pickleball courts always look neat with the blue and the green like that.
There wasn't any room for benches or anything at the basketball.
we did inspect it there, just typically a crowd.
They don't mind sitting on the ground.
Piles of stuff around, sitting
Yeah.
on there, and I just,
Yep, gotcha.
all our stuff's in the cars, and it's just something
True.
to run into or something,
Looks good.
All right. Do we have any other questions? Are we all okay with that $10,000-ish budget amendment next week?
It's fine.
Sounds like we're all okay with it. Sir, and we appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Do we want to make a separate item and vote on it, or do we want to agree tonight and put it as a consent item?
Why don't we put it as a separate
Yeah, that's what we
Yeah.
bring to the public.
Yeah, Heather prepares a budget amendment and put it on consent, if you're okay with that, we'll just make sure to look at it, if you need to cover it, if you need to do that.
Yeah, I think it's fine if we put it under consent, but I guess we've got any questions, I guess we can go over it when we get to the consent part of the agenda next week.
I mean,
But-
We'll put it as a discussion on.
should we keep something on the agenda so the public can see what we're doing? Because if you put it in consent, nobody's gonna know what we're doing. Sure.
We can just not put it on consent.
I'm
I'd
okay
like
if
to
it be
have we not put it
discussion.
under consent, just so the public can see what we're doing.
I'm okay, everybody okay with
Good
that?
with that.
Yeah.
Got it.
I do think you're gonna have, I told Mark, you agree, I think the basketball courts are gonna be some of the nicest I know of personally. So,
That's awesome.
It's good to hear.
So how high are the fences all around the outside of this thing?
8 foot.
I think it's. Yeah, we're looking forward to shooting hoops on there.
yeah, well, so you want to come.
Get some exercise, stress debriefing.
I think it'd be really nice. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank y'all.
All right.
Thank you, Ben.
Now we'll move on to
Yeah.
the citizen survey. Mr. Manager.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. So I wanted to follow up with you from the very large report we received from Polco on the citizen survey results. So you've got a copy in your packet. I did a memo trying to break out kind of highlights of the report. The reports, I mean, there's a lot of data in there. It's like 78 pages. So I tried to condense this down into something that kind of hits at, what people said as far as what was important and what was rated high for quality or not important or rated lower for quality. So, we started this way back in October, executed the contract. The survey didn't go out to January. And we had 3 phases, and we started it with the postcard, and it was followed up with a hard copy mail with return envelope, and then an open participation period. And really, the overall purpose, again, was to try and improve engagement with the public, to get feedback on issues and services here. So I think the survey did a good job, a decent job of that. It is a lot of information, I know, to ask people, and a big thank you to the residents who took the time to complete this. I think we definitely need to acknowledge that, because surveys are a pain. I would just say personally, I hate filling out surveys unless it's something really important to me. I won't take the time to do it, or someone really is asking me, they really want you to do it, I don't do it. But so that was great that we had a number of people that responded. And again, it was looking at 10 facets here: economy, mobility, community design, utilities, safety, natural environment, parks and recreation, health and wellness, education, arts and culture, and inclusivity and engagement. So kind of running into kind of breaking out some elements of it. The second page, I talk about deployment of the survey, and I basically just said what the steps were, with the postcard to the hard copy mailing, and then the open participation period. We also sent out blackboard calls, and they're getting those to try to encourage people to participate. And then messages on Facebook and our website. The percentage who responded was 20% of the households. I know at face value, 20% looks like a low number, but for a survey, that's not particularly low. So it was a decent response rate, considering it's a survey. And we sent it out to all our households. We didn't do a sampling.
Right.
The report mentions a random sampling, but because our number of households was not that large, we were able to convince them to send it to everything that we had mailing list for. So that was good. As far as demographics, who responded to it, mostly older. I'll include myself because I'm now at the beginning of that range there, the 55 plus, as of April 23rd. But so 64% were of them people responded were 55 or older. As far as homeowners, renters, mostly homeowners, 94% were homeowners versus renters. And of the homeowners, about 76% were detached, so it'd be like, I guess, a regular single-family home. As far as racial breakdown, and we don't go in, it doesn't give a lot of detail into the different racial groups, but generally about 89% white versus 11% non-white, which is fairly representative of the demographic for race breakdown in Fletcher. And then more women than men, female respondents were 62% versus 30% males.
What does that tell you?
Well, I'll say something positive. Women take the time, effort to put into this more than guys do. I would be my general takeaway on it.
Or the men tell the women to do this.
Yeah, will you do this, please? And
That's
they
it.
step up, right?
That's it.
Like normal, yep, as usual. And then into, they call it facets of livability, so this gets into things that were ranked higher or lower. They kind of looking at two things here, so it's quality or performance, and then the other part is what's important, issues that they think are important in these facets. So on the kind of ranked high quality, overall feeling of safety at 83%. When it's 83%, that 83% are people who ranked it good or excellent for a feeling of safety as quality. Overall quality of parks and rec opportunities, 83%, so that's high. Overall quality of utility infrastructure, I thought that was interesting, 72%, so that was fairly high. And then overall economic health at 65%. So those are some highlights of what, quality-wise, folks thought were high here. And then just some things low on the quality, transportation system. So that's probably not surprising with, that's going to get to some frustrations with traffic, generally speaking, with road layout and how that helps to improve or mitigate it. And then the other thing that was ranked low was opportunities for education, culture, and arts. So that was a little bit on the lower side. And then getting to what things of perceived areas of importance, so what they think are most important, not necessarily doing as well, but overall quality of the utility infrastructure, that ranked highest. I thought that was interesting at 94%. Overall feeling of safety, of course, very high at 91%. And then overall economic health at 89%. And then quality of parks and recreation opportunities, that's obviously people very important at 86%. And then overall design and layout of residential and commercial areas at 85%. So how things are laid out, designed, planned. And then I thought this was a really interesting part of the report. Then they tried to kind of overlap, performance and importance. So it's talking about that section in the prior page. So what do you rank that's high important versus you're doing well, and hopefully those two things overlap or intersect. And some of the things that did overlap nicely or fairly well were safety, parks and recreation, natural environment, utilities, and the economy. And then a couple that were important but didn't rank as high were community design and mobility, which gets to some layout of neighborhoods, and mobility is going to get into transportation issues. And if you look on page 6 of the report, it kind of nicely graphically shows that. If you have the report, well, it's in the packet, but page 6 talks about that balancing performance and importance. And if you look at the upper right side of this diagram, so quality is on the vertical axis and importance on the horizontal axis there. And so if something's high quality and high importance, it's going to be more up to the upper right. And so you've got that parks and recreation, safety, utilities, economy, natural environment, important and ranked performance-wise well. Something maybe a little still high importance, but didn't rank as high in the quality with like that community design I pointed out, mobility, that was real low. Education and arts and culture kind of in there, and inclusivity engagement, which wasn't ranked as high as importance, but did a little bit better on the quality.
I would think the mobility would go up quite a bit if we could get a little bit more sidewalks and greenways connecting the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of parents are concerned when, one child lives here and then there's another neighborhood next door, but there's no easy way to get from point A to point B.
Yeah. We can get to the point like sidewalks on, let's just say Fanning Bridge, which has been, and then that could connect to some areas. I think that would help. I mean, sidewalks in other areas too.
Yeah.
But, so I thought that was interesting. It's a good thing. I mean, we've got quite a few that are, the public is ranked high as important and high quality as far as the service. So that's good. I think it's encouraging to see. And then just some other things on key findings. And there's a lot of information here, but people experiencing a high quality of life and strong sense of safety. So 90% of residents gave the town an excellent or good rating as a place to live. Back to the safety issue, 83% of residents gave a rating of excellent or good for feeling of being safe here. And which speaks well to police, fire, EMS services. Quality of our natural environment was ranked at 73% as being good or excellent, and then that parks and rec opportunities, again, ranked high, 83%. Three things of particular note here on these key findings I thought was interesting. It really tells you how much people value these things, and we see it because they use it a lot. And Public Works does, I think, a heck of a job doing these things, does it at a very high level. Yard waste pickup, so brush pickup, that was something that was higher than national comparisons for us. Recycling services, that was one in there. Now, I know we contract for that, but it's one of our solid waste services. And the quality of our towns, our parks, and of our parks ranked higher than the national benchmark. So I thought those were some important things to pull out. On the custom questions, 94% of residents supported proposed development of additional greenway trails from Billmore Community Park to the Miracle property. That was a specific question we had in the custom questions. So that was interesting, which then I think Bob gets back to the mobility. Probably would boost the score of mobility. 89% of residents also supported that further expansion of the greenway outside the town to the larger regional network of trails. So that's pretty high.
What about the rest of the custom questions? There's 5.
Yeah.
You only talk about 2 in here.
Well, I was pulling from the report like highlights of what was particularly good, and I'll get, there's a couple things on the downtown development which get a little bit to the less. But I tried to pull from what they were saying is high. We can go through every one of
Okay.
those.
I was just curious. Just
But-
talked about the greenways only.
Yeah, and you can see the results on and all the other custom questions in the report. But I was trying to hit the highlights of some of the things they commented on.
Well, I was glad to see the Greenway
Yeah,
percentages come back
it
to
was
what they
very
were,
high.
yeah, particularly because we've been talking about the ARPA money and greenways and
Spending a lot of
connect-
money.
Yeah, and connecting to Water Trail
I
Network.
will say the Greenway part, we did a survey, everyone was on council, Keith and Trevor were on council at the time, if I remember, we did a survey of park patrons, and that was, and we did a mail out too, I think we did a townwide mail out, and that was the number
Number
one
one,
thing
yeah.
for park improvements, is Greenway expansion, so, so on the, back to the economy, that was one highlight. So 9 in 10 residents felt that the economy was essential or very important for the community for the next 2 years. But 4 out of 10 of those rated Fletcher's variety of businesses as excellent or good, which is not very high, which I think then leads into, that was lower than the national benchmark, which kind of, we don't have a good variety of stores in town, which, we're trying to do this whole development of our downtown area, which I think provides some greater justification for that. That's not something that's ranked very high or pointed out as lower than the national average.
Well, we're competing with Airport Road, so
Oh, sure.
all businesses are gonna flock to Airport Road because they have more exposure and it's closer to South Asheville, and so I can see how that would happen, but I also feel like when we can get this up here up and running again, I think we'll see a difference, and maybe we'll see some more come on.
Yeah.
Come
And
on,
I'm
boy.
hoping that when we get this done, that'll pump out enough interest that they clean up the shopping center across the street, maybe get some better stores in there.
Yep.
Yeah, but if you look at it, it may be dated, but it's not that bad. Yeah, I mean,
No, you
you
mean
know,
selection of
it's-
stores and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, we need a better selection of stores, but the overall area, when I looked at it and thought about it, it actually is fairly clean, and they paint it fairly regularly. It just, it still probably needs an uplift and some better stores for sure.
Yeah. I've received negative feedback from people in the public about that shopping center.
Yeah, I'm sure they'd rather see something more modern and
Yeah.
better.
I mean, some of the stores are well used in there, but it's variety, appearance, some of those things.
Yeah.
So some of the other highlights in the custom questions here, the downtown development. So they provided, I thought, some interesting insight here on what they kind of were the highest percentage of desired types of businesses in the downtown area. The biggest priorities, and number one was dine-in restaurants and bars. It's 73% is essential or very important. Health services was second. That was interesting. So doctors, hospitals, dentists, which I really think there's definitely a demand as they're building new health facilities, places, but particularly in Fletcher, because we don't have a lot of doc's offices or dentists or lawyer or accountant. There's a real deficit of that in Fletcher proper. I mean, you don't have to go far, but there is a demand for that here. Arts and entertainment options at 55%. Maintenance, repair, and construction services at 51%. And then hardware and home goods at 44%. I was trying to pick the ones that were highest of what they would like to see. So those are some, I think, interesting observations from the survey as far as feedback. And I've gone through the whole thing, and you can, there's interesting information here. Some of it not terribly enlightening because I'm not, surprised at some of the feedback. It's mostly positive. I mean, I do think, and I'm getting into the kind of concluding thoughts and recommendations, just looking at this overall, the governance section, It was okay, but, you know, there was some things in there that kind of lead me to think, you know, we need to continue to look for more ways to engage the public and feedback. I know this council's always been very interested in knowing that, that's great. And if, you know, we do things like, website is okay, you know, if you go look to the website for something, if you're looking for that. Social media is very helpful, because that's very, you know, people use social media more and more. Facebook has been helpful. You know, we do the Blackboard calls, the newsletter. There's a decent number of people get the newsletter and read it, so they're getting information. You know, a potential next step in here that could help, depending how much people use it, we get this digital platform from this as well, where I guess people get registered, who responded to the survey, and then we can put things in there where they can respond to issues that are in the digital platform. And we haven't really delved into how that, you know, best way to use it, but that's another tool. So, yeah, I thought, excuse me, it provided some really good feedback in those areas. You know, that community design and mobility issues, that was something I think that bears more thought. You know, on the community design, that also gets at land use regulations and planning. I think council, I think y'all have done some good things, in particular like 25, limiting the amount of multifamily opportunities that can happen, because you know, there was a desire to limit apartment complexes, that kind of multifamily, feeling that we've got, you know, a decent amount with some of the newer projects, and preserving 25 for predominantly commercial activity, because there's not many places you can do multifamily projects still in Butcher, just based on our zoning. And we largely, I mean, to some extent, unless you do conditional district and zoning, have taken that away from 25. So, you know, those are some other things, is, I guess, feedback or driving growth. Let's see, so I mentioned about engagement. I think there's opportunities for more public engagement. This was a good opportunity to engage with the public, doing the survey. The televised meetings, and that being recorded, I think that'll help with public engagement. I know it's a little bit one way. You know, you kind of have to wait to hear if there's something of particular interest that some of them may have based on viewing the meeting. But
You
so
know,
that's another one.
sorry, Mark. I was just going to pose something to council that the city of Hendersonville does. I think they do pretty well in terms of engagement. They have something called, I think, council conversations or something titled that way, and they go to a local business like a coffee shop, like Black Bear Coffee in downtown Hendersonville, and I think they do it every couple of months or something like that, and council member goes each time along with the staff member, and they invite the public, which I think is a really good idea, to be honest, because it gives us a chance to maybe reach the public in a more accessible place, and probably a more comfortable place as well, and it gives us an opportunity to support a local business. Do y'all have any thoughts on that? I think they do it really well. I think it's maybe something
Try it,
worthwhile.
but I would think Hendersonville would be more successful because they're more of a downtown community. We're still
we
trying
don't
to
have
find
the
downtown Fletcher.
But yeah, I mean, it could even be like in the like at the pavilion at the park. I mean, there's places we could figure out how to do it.
I like the idea of, if you're gonna do it, I like the idea of going to a local business or something and give them some business.
Yeah, I do too. On PB&J's,
Yeah, we got the
cafe or
coffee shop,
Fletcher.
we've got
Bakery.
PB&J's at the garage. It's a coffee shop.
I mean, there's some details that could be worked out. But
Fletcher Village Bakery's
yeah.
got coffee and seating area, you know, it's, yeah, those, sometimes they're really good, sometimes it's low turnout, it depends who's interested in engagement. Chief's been trying to do some things like that, they haven't had the best turnout on it, but,
I
but
mean-
it's something, sure.
I was gonna say, I mean, maybe the police or other departments could be tied into it as well. Sorry, go ahead, Bob, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I don't think I'm on the town's Facebook. I get push notifications from Parks and Rec, but I don't really notice much other than that. And maybe that's one thing that we should look into is anytime something important happens, opening of a new store or anything, push out a little paragraph blurb on Facebook saying, you know, this is happening in Fletcher, and have these things come out on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to me,
The newsletter.
I've seen a couple of
Well,
posts.
it's in the newsletter, but I don't think a whole lot of people take the time to sit and read the whole
No,
newsletter.
that's a good point. We try and do updates to the towns. We have a general town one, and then Parks and Rec has in the police department on Facebook. You know, they're centric to, you know, their activities, and we try and do something more general with, and so that could be a good suggestion to post that on there too. Like Christine said, Susan Hepner does our newsletter, and it's a good idea, highlight new businesses coming
You know,
in.
we have the digitized version of the Asheville Citizen Times, and you can go in and read the whole paper, but they've gone to a point now where every week they'll push out information for 7 or 8 different news items, and you always see it a day before you see it in the regular newspaper. But when they push it out as just one item, one topic, I think people will tend to, if they're interested in it, they'll read it more than trying to search for it in the newspaper.
Yeah.
So back to Preston's recommendation, I'm not against it. Have a call with some people. So.
Give it a try.
Work to the logistics. And just to respond to your comment, I think there has been times on the Facebook page where we might have highlighted some new businesses, if I remember that correctly. It seems to be pretty regularly updated to me, the Facebook page, whether it's daily or at least a few times a week.
Heather's primarily doing it, I've done some, but we're always looking for good content, you know, to put on there, so that would be interesting, a new business coming in, or.
I would maybe,
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You're on your proposal, I would recommend doing community outreach like at Kate's Park, because then parents that have children, kids can go run and play, and then we could gather at the gazebo and besides the steel case shelter, the Kate's Park. And then I would also recommend the community centers and the apartment complexes, because those are the folks that typically don't get out and about. I
That's a
mean,
good point,
they're
yeah.
busy working, and so when we were campaigning, when we were at the park, we had people walk over and they said, you know, we just didn't know anything and just thought we'd come by, and, you know, so to go to their community centers within their apartment complexes after work or on a Saturday would probably give you some good result.
Yeah, I think so. And I don't want to be more partisan to staff, but when I was thinking, just kind of generally through it right now, I thought probably Saturday might work best for accessibility to the public. I'm not sure what y'all's thoughts on that
I think it's
are.
always good to, I think having a police officer or, you know, chief or someone, you know, to come spend an hour or two is excellent idea, because a lot of times people will have questions, and just being able to ask that question to a law enforcement officer is just, it'd be like a light bulb moment for them, things that they don't understand or things that they see and don't understand. I think that would be great. I think if everybody's very happy with our public works, we probably don't need Jabbo too much, but I don't know, you know, might be
I
surprised,
have
but
questions for him.
yeah, because for instance, I know neighbors have wondered, can I just leave that one bag of trash out instead of roll the can out? Or, you know, what if recycle doesn't come, or, you know, things like that.
Yeah. Good. I can reach out to Hendersonville too and see how what their process has
Yeah,
been.
whether it's scheduled
Yeah,
topics, or is it
Right.
always totally open meetings, or?
Yeah, and what's the format, you know, what's the cross-section, do they have topics they throw out, or, you know?
I think just
That's
having
a
that
flaw.
availability is, you know, I don't think it has to be a set up forum per se.
Right.
But just having that accessibility and be available,
Yeah.
and once per quarter, I think would work out real well. That's just my opinions. I have no idea how often Hendersonville meets or anything like that.
Yeah,
but-
and we might not need, and to be honest, we probably don't need to do it as much as they do it. I would perceive they would probably have a much higher turnout than we would.
They did this thing, I don't know if it was the same thing you were mentioning, Preston, but they did a whole bunch of community meetings. I'm trying to remember what this was based out of, like, if it was from the survey or from, it was like top issues of importance or I think they did them and they just wanted to hear from the public about
What's the county doing something
well,
like
it
that?
was about maybe 4 years, it was a little while back. And it was interesting, some of the overlap of things that we observe out here. Like, one of them was this top thing that came out of meeting with neighborhood groups. So like, let's just say Windsor Forest or someone living in some farms, was traffic enforcement. It was like a top, you know, a big thing. Complaints about people running red lights, you know, stuff like that. It's, we're seeing it here too, and we're hearing from residents that they don't want more traffic enforcement. So
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting, some common themes.
Yeah, I do recall them having a particular neighborhood meeting on a particular topic, and I think it was in regards to their new police station and I guess how residents in that area felt about where it was going to go, something along those lines. But I know they have had particular meetings as well
Okay.
on specific topics.
Good idea, great idea. You could have like River Birch and St. John and that surrounding area, like have an open door at Babel's. I'm sure he would love that. And then also, you know, use some of the community centers, you know, and then of course Kate's Park and Steelcase Shelter.
I think HOAs sometimes, you know, would be interested in having
Yeah.
town officials there to, you know, share information, answer questions. You know, it doesn't have to be a big dog and pony show per se. Because I think sometimes you lose people too. They don't want to hear a big presentation.
General
Or,
updates.
yeah, you know, open it up, say some things, and then they can ask you questions.
Well, I've tried that before, and it didn't work out well for me
Okay.
that one time I tried. Because I thought the same thing, to go to an HOA meeting, you just sit in the back, but be available, and be able to talk to some neighbors, hear what concerns are, maybe even give them an update. And the one that I tried was like at Livingston Farms. It was a few years ago. And whoever it was at the time, when I'd been invited, and that's how I knew where it was. And so I went, and they just said, well, you have to be a resident. You can't come in if you're not a resident. And I was like, I can understand that, but I'm your council person in your area, and a resident had invited me to come, and I even told her who the resident was, and I said, I didn't need to speak or anything. I just wanted to, you know, maybe let y'all know when your recycle cans are coming out, and I thought maybe I could be there to answer questions. I thought it was an excellent way, and she was like, no, you'd have to ask for permission from so-and-so, I can make a phone call, and I'm like, no, it's all good. I'm not gonna make that much of a struggle over it, but
Yeah.
to me, HOA meetings would be ideal.
The rooms constantly. So
Huh?
if y'all ever want to know when an
That's a good
HOA
point.
meeting or whoever is doing.
Yeah,
They're doing it, like Christine, they're doing it
Well,
more and more.
if that's the case, when they make the booking, why don't we ask them, do you want?
that's
our
an excellent
representative
idea,
at the
yeah.
meeting?
Just, would you like a council member to stop by, or, because you don't want to make a big deal out of it, but it is nice when you get to talk to residents. To me, I thought that was an excellent way to make that happen.
I've got Winston and Stafford Hills and.
I couldn't make, I had one in, I just couldn't, it was really short notice, I couldn't make it, and forget which, one, maybe it was St. John's. It was
Yeah,
about,
it was, yeah.
The reval. So, I did respond to the residents saying, well, what we're trying to do with reval and that, I didn't hear back from them.
That, I think that's a great idea, Bob, if we could, if they book, just say, would you like a council member to stop by and answer any questions you may have? Or address any concerns? Because if you don't know, you can't do anything about it.
Right. And sometimes, these things are good, just, well, not to overuse the word engagement, but you meet more people.
Oh,
You get
absolutely, yeah.
feedback. Sometimes it's things you hear and you're like, well, I already know that. Sometimes, there's some interesting nugget that's dropped in there, like, oh, I never knew that, or
Absolutely.
never thought about it that way.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Good thoughts.
yeah, the only thing I had under concluding thoughts, recommendations for it is, and I know it's costly to do it, but that we repeat it maybe every 2 to 3 years, and it might be interesting to track that. So it's something to keep in mind. You don't have to make a decision about that now, but
I just don't want it to turn out to be like, I don't know what that one survey is, they keep asking me for my input. And in fact, every 2 months, they ask me to take this survey again and tell me what changed from the previous 2 months. Well,
Yeah.
nothing's changed in 2 months.
That's probably the same survey I've been
I
getting.
got to the point where I said, I don't even open it anymore.
yeah.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking
about.
Community something.
Yeah.
Yep.
I stopped.
You have to
Doing it.
unsubscribe.
You hit
Yeah.
delete.
I wouldn't mind doing it again, but I think I'd rather wait like 4 years or 5 years, because we have
That's
like.
kind of the time frame I was thinking.
Yeah, because you have your CIP on.
You gotta give things
5
time to
years.
change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sit down, how many go first and then ask them.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because it usually takes us a period of time to get some initiatives done, and 4 or 5 years to me would be good.
I'd agree.
Did they ever, I know one thing we've requested a couple of times, the raw data, the good, bad, and ugly
Yeah,
comments,
they-
there's nothing again showed
They
anything.
did, and they sent me an email, I wasn't able to, I'll get it.
Yeah.
I gotta follow up on it. I was able to get it, I wasn't able to get it and see it. Because, you need to, if you haven't, and I can forward the email, but I'd rather, if I can print it or whatever, send something electronically, see you've got that. see
Yeah,
too.
I'm just kind of curious about comments, what
Yeah,
people had.
interesting.
Yeah, good, bad, and ugly. so.
Yeah. Let me, just making a note here. Okay. All right, that was all I had.
That's all you have.
Yeah.
Are there any more questions or comments on that item? Okay, we'll move on to item number 6, the update on the development of a traffic calming policy. Mr. Manager.
And I don't have a new policy here, but I want you to know we are researching this. And just a couple interesting things. I did find an old policy here that McGill Associates had put together, a traffic calming policy. It was obviously before my time, because they didn't do that while I was here. I've been here over 17 years now, January. And I can't tell that this was ever adopted by council. It may have been for informational purposes. I don't know if you ever took action on it. I mean, I would recommend that, you don't remember it either, that it be adopted and something we implement or use as needed. The one that they had drafted, the public or neighborhood ask council first to look into an issue or whatever it is, speeding, cut through traffic. And then, it's a multi-step process. The police review it. If it's some lower level type of actions that may not address it, then it goes to a next step with a formal petition from the neighborhood. And then they start looking at kind of a menu of options for traffic calming measures. It can be anywhere from, the speed tables are one of them in there, the speed bumps. It could be signage, it can be adjusting the direction, much more involved, costly things in different steps, if you will. And it's a pretty long one here from this old one I found. And then Asheville was sort of looking at theirs, and it's a multi-step process too. They have an engineering division that reviews and assesses points based on traffic flow, speeding, measures on speeds of people in the neighborhood. The town's old one did some things like that. The town's old one had some part where the residents can potentially have to contribute towards the cost. I don't know, I wouldn't recommend you do that, because that, well, number one, it could be antagonistic back while you're making a decision, so we've got, funds raised for these things.
I'm sure that was done before the town had any streets that we controlled.
Yeah, or much for reserves probably in Powellville and things like that. Asheville's is a fairly involved process. It's not, there's a lot of evaluation, because if you get to the point where you're looking at improvements, they could have lots of them from different neighborhoods, and they prioritize that. And I'm sort of looking at Hickories, and I'm looking at another one, City of Hickories, which was, again, a phased process, and getting to a point where they're either recommending some improvements or some enforcement actions or some lower level types of steps, if you will. My goal is to try and get something more concrete to you by June. It's just, we're very involved in the budget process right now, so that's kind of where we're at. Just want to let you know it's in process. We're working on it. We'll come back to you with a suggested policy or some policy options for you to consider. Also on the speed trailer, that our police chief and our public works director are looking at several different options. We didn't get a chance to meet last week to start evaluating those, but I wanted to mention that to you and hopefully bring a recommendation. And if, monies need to be appropriated to do that, we can get that going and, purchased in this fiscal year. So that was kind of some of the follow-ups. They put the signs up in the Windsor Forest there with the lowering the speed limit. But that's what's happening with the traffic calming policy.
Have you,
Speed trailer.
have you all heard any feedback from Windsor Forest residents?
I haven't.
Did we put up new signs?
Yeah, they put new signs. He was gonna do it the next day. I haven't driven through there.
Yeah, they were up at Bighorn.
Big flags, you can't miss them.
So that's what's happening. Like I said, we'll come back with a new updated policy on this, and I'd like to get it to a point something you're all comfortable with and adopt. And all of these different ones, there's a lot of engagement back and forth with the neighborhood once you get to, or something elevates to making some specific improvements in there, kind of a menu of options.
Have we heard anything back from the county on their tax rates?
Yeah, I'll get to that. Here's the next thing. And there's no questions on that, and it's, I guess, move back to manager comments.
Yeah, are we all good there? You got it, Mark.
Okay, thank you. So kind of a budget update. So we've got all our revenues. The tax assessor gave us the last update on values last week. I plugged that in. Just, I'm putting in a 28-cent tax rate. We're currently at 34 cents. The initial calculation of revenue neutral that we got from Darlene Burgess, the tax assessor, was 28 cents. With the value that she just provided last week, it was 27.7 cents, so. Yeah, well, that one was 27.7. Yeah, but my recommendation's very close. That's, in the scheme of things, it's almost minuscule. I mean, if we had a much larger valuation, then you look harder at going into a fraction of a penny. But, so 28 cents, so that's that last set of values, which was 27.7. That's what I'm going to plug in here for the recommended budget that I'll submit to you next week. Next week. So that's May 10th. Just some other I don't know what the county's going to do on their rate yet, to answer your question. I emailed the county manager over the weekend, and emergency services director replied to me. It was about fire tax rates, not about what the county's going to do with their general rate. I was trying to get a feel, the fire department's going to, because the county sets that stuff back to revenue neutral. He didn't know yet at this point. There's this fire commission that reviews it, I think by the middle of May. They're supposed to know, or remember right the date cut off. I did ask, or he shared what Fletcher Fire and Rescue has recommended for lowering the rate, or offered at least, and what Mills River, because they deal with the two fire departments. It was only like a penny drop. What I've put in, and maybe the county will make them go to revenue neutral, because if they don't, you're going to have huge increases in tax bills on that portion of it. And fire departments aren't the ones that have to answer to that. It's going to be board of commissioners. So I don't know what their plan is, but they haven't. What I've been hearing is the county's going to go to revenue neutral, and I don't know about fire departments. I'm hoping, if not revenue, something close to it, because we're all still appreciating some pretty good increases in values. One hit that we've taken, I think we are experiencing it now until that building gets leased, out, is the Continental site. We had a pretty big drop in our business personal. And I think a certain portion of that is, at least at this point in the estimate, is attributed to it. So, I've got 28 cents in there right now. That's what I'm planning on recommending to you next week in the whole document. The fire departments, I dropped Fletcher Fire and Rescue's rate from 11.5 to 9.5 cents. You're still getting, if you approve it at that level, it's still getting a big increase. Right? It's like 140-some thousand in new tax levy. Mills River, it's not much. We're still under contract with them for the Continental property through 2026. I don't know what the rate's going to be. They're at 11. I think they offered to go to 10. But in the scheme of things, that's not much money as part of your budget.
Who actually, we set the rate to Mill River also, don't we?
Well, the contract says as determined by the county. Their contract with Mills River. Now, Fletcher Fire and Rescues says it has some language. It's a little vague about what the county does, but it gives us a floor. We can't go below 9.5 cents. So, and 9.5, lowering it 2 pennies is pretty proportional to what we're doing, lowering it from 34 to 28 cents as a percentage of what the town is going to lose to help pay for things versus the fire department. So it's a pretty fair reduction in rate.
To me, since Mills River is virtually giving us nothing for what we're giving to them, to me, the cheapest we can get by giving them, that's what we should do.
I agree.
So what I'm hoping is the county's going to decide to go to revenue neutral in fire department districts too, because that would help.
I don't know, I've had a few discussions with you, and there's a lot of people, I think, that are pushing to get increases to the fire departments so they can start paying their people more. But I mean, in my mind, it wasn't that long ago that our fire department was a disaster. They didn't have money to buy turnout gear, and within the last couple of years, they've completely turned it around. They've got a halfway decent sized surplus now. They have all the equipment they want, so things must be going pretty good over there. You know, they still complain about not having enough money to pay the firemen. To make a turnaround in that short a period of time, they must be doing something right.
I know some of the fire departments in the county, that's, I guess it's one of these agreements with the county commissioners years ago, if they don't raise their, or ask for an increase within 4 years, they'll get their increase during the reevaluation. That's where they take that large sum of money and plan for the next 4 years. They can't come back and ask for an increase in between. So
They depend on it.
they depend on it, basically. I know some fire departments do that. Now, this recent evaluation was extremely high, so, I mean, it went way above the peak more than,
Well, that might have been what he was talking about, that they have to provide a budget that's good for 4 years.
yeah. Before the county commissioner said, don't come to us and ask between, but we'll let you do this. But this year's been kind of unusual because the sales tax, or the sales of property in 2022 was so high. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. But I mean, even just lowering it 2 cents from 11.5 to 9.5 on electric car rescue, there's still a pretty significant increase in levy, new revenues that they're getting.
I guess the question is, do we have to match whatever the county, if the county commissioner says no, we're going to leave it at 11, I guess we have to match that. I just care.
The language is a little vague in there, I know, because one part I'm reading it, I'm thinking, it says as determined by the county, but then it says we can't go lower than 9.5. So when you read it, it first says we can't go lower than 9.5, and then there's something in there about,
The county.
yeah, the county determining the rate. So, I mean, we'll do whatever's right to do in there on it, but, I mean, right now, I've got 9.5.
Well,
They
you
still
have to
get it.
stay competitive with the rest of the county, or we'll lose all the people.
Yeah.
And that 9.5 still gives them
Oh, it's,
a large.
yeah, it's like 140, at the current value that I just got this past week, it was like 144,000 increase over last year. So, I mean, with the town going back to revenue neutral, we're seeing very little increase in our property tax revenues or levy if you do that. It's not,
But we've been doing good for the last quite a while now. We built up our,
but I'm just saying compared to the hit the
Yeah.
fire department would take. So, no, we've been very fortunate with getting enough new values over the years that it's helped town operations and that part of the rate that we send to the fire department, so. But I like what Trevor was saying, I don't know, maybe the county may be looking at revals the time that they get an extra windfall and then don't be coming back every year. I don't know, I just haven't heard any official word. I'm probably gonna reach out to Chief Garland and some others, or maybe talk to Jimmy Rossi a little bit more. As much as they can say what are they hearing, is it likely to be revenue neutral, is it gonna be something above that?
Somewhere in the middle.
I can't remember if I've asked you before, but items like when the airport authority takes a piece of property and turns it into a commercial endeavor, are taxes paid on that? Like the gas station and donut store, are those taxes, are they paying taxes on, or the golf course? Now the golf course belongs to the airport, is somebody paying taxes?
I think we still are, but I can double check on that, which is a good question. Because yes, technically under the ownership of a authority. And I would think that authority's got tax exempt status as a public entity type of authority.
And I wonder if the county has gone and checked everything that used to be owned by Mission Hospital to see if they're now paying taxes now that they are no longer a nonprofit.
You asked me to double check, and they are paying property taxes on the.
I just wonder if anybody is actually, whether somebody in the tax office is actually checking to make sure that they all converted over. Because they went from probably not
They
paying.
do audit that, I don't know that it caught everything, I mean, it's showing, and we get our assessment from the county, so we don't do our own separate assessment.
Right,
We
right.
bill separately, it's not imagined that they are, if we'll see it for us. Just a couple other things in the budget that, we dedicate 8.5 cents of our tax rate to CIP. It is producing so much more expense revenue in there when you run the calculations. One other recommendation I was gonna have, I was planning on putting this in, but I want to give you a heads up in case there's problems with that, is to lower the amount of the tax rate that's dedicated to CIP by at least 1 penny. Right now, it's, like I said, it's 8.5 cents. We're doing 6.5 to debt service, 2 cents of that to cash projects. And we've been typically having a lot of room, like not, fully expending the debt service side, because we haven't had enough projects financed that have a debt service that eats up the whole debt service part of that calculation with the tax rate. And the cash is no problem. We're usually, within our CIP, we're utilizing all those funds. So, I mean, it's just, because it artificially, because we lowered the rate. Yeah, we lowered the rate, and the values have gone up a tremendous amount of the rebound. We don't adjust that back. It's just, you're putting all this money into CIP, that then it'll be excess revenue, and then you either, it becomes a bit of a, it's not a shell game, it depends if you leave it in there, but do you move that back to help cover our operating expense, which would make a lot more sense if you don't need it there. So one of the things I would suggest is lower it by at least a penny. I was going to say a penny right now. And then the debt service side, lower it by a penny in there of that 8.5 cents. So it's 5.5 of debt service and then 2 on the cash. So just give you a heads up on that.
I mean, we can take a little bit off the cash side too, you think? I mean, if you're trying to keep it similar kind of across the board, you might want to drop that down to 1.75 or.
Yeah, we could do 1.5.
1.5.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the kind of things, but it can change from year to year if you want.
Let me run the numbers with Heather on this, and then right now I was going to try and do it with just a penny reduction, so from the 8.5 to 7.5, take that 1 penny off the debt service. I mean, that saves $177,000 out of there, and if that seems reasonable in relation to our overall operation, then that might not be bad to use that in a balanced budget. Because what we're trying to stay away from is using too much fund balance where it starts getting applied to operations. We want it to be more relative to capital, because if you keep doing it in operations, it's bad practice, and you start really depleting your reserves. So if we can get to a balanced budget without too much fund balance in there, or more of it towards capital one-time stuff, that would be better. It would be more wise to do that. So anyway, that's what's happening. It's coming together. There's nothing, hugely difficult in there. There's always some hard things as far as cuts, but again, we're very fortunate we've done well to this point. That helps weathering, what to do with rebound and revenue neutral much easier. So
one of the actuated flasher or signal at Cooper's Creek and Wildflower Road, so the one near leaving the cove, the power's there, the power's on. Jabo had talked to them this week, and DOT just like, I guess needs to take the covers off and turn it on, basically. So we're hoping within the next week that that thing's on and that's working, so.
And that's probably something you probably ought to mention next week.
Yeah.
Either way, so
Yeah,
you'll
yeah.
probably know more about it.
Sure, and, you know, we can do something in the newsletter and Facebook, just let the public know, get the word out. So that's imminent, that's gonna be on, but we kept waiting for the power company to get the connection, and that's been resolved, so now, DOT should be able to go out there and meet it and turn it on, and then we take over maintenance of it. That's one part of this. Another kind of actuated flasher discussion, and I kind of got into this with Michael Luplow at Fernleaf. A resident had been by and was requesting, complaining about how dangerous it is with people in the morning taking the crosswalk. And there's some of the residents that live in Groves, the town center apartment complex, or the park, they're walking across the street, and there's nothing to really draw your attention to it. People are coming, they're going to work, they're coming fast on Howard Gap, and some, I guess they've had a couple close calls.
Where are you talking about?
So, when you're going down Howard Gap on the sidewalk, like by that pain management place, there's our crosswalk to the other side is right there.
Oh, okay.
And they were crossing in the morning, and, just a lot of people going fast in Howard Gap coming in.
Yeah, I mean, I drive it every morning. It's, you have to pay attention.
Yeah.
It's kids, it's pets, it's,
Yeah.
they
So-
just dart across.
Fernleaf has been met with DOT and looked at it, and I'm sure you've all seen it, these types of crosswalks. There's one in front of near the Leland Patterson Center, so going out to the hospital. I think they have the academy students are going to come up to it. I don't know if it sees you or you press a button, but it does the flashing. Yeah, they got a fancy name for it. They call them a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, RRFB. So remember that, there'll be a test later. So Michael Luplow had met with DOT, and he goes, to do an RRFB is like $21,000, and DOT's not funding it. They say they don't have funding for them. And what's been happening with the schools in Henderson County, when they want one, they got to pay for it. DOT will put it in, they'll assume maintenance of it, but you got paid. So Michael had suggested, and I said, well, I'll float it out here, you don't have to decide tonight, but if we did a cost share with them, the reason he suggested a cost share is, obviously our residents are crossing there, but you've also got, an issue of our greenway expansion. Part of the design would be crossing on that crosswalk to get to the other side, to go across the permanent property and on out towards Veritor. So I didn't say yes or no. I think it's a great idea. I said I'd bring it up. So it's something to think about. I guess it's going to have some merit in that our greenway extension goes, and that's what's going to be used. We're going to be driving traffic that's not school traffic going there.
Did he say a percentage or what? How that's split? He wanted to do 50/50.
I would support it, isn't it? Because of the greenways and because we need to keep them in our good graces if we want that greenway to go over that bridge.
Something to think about. Like I said, don't have to make a decision right now, but I just wanted to bring that up. Then
our developer response on the TIA. I know I've been telling you, I've been communicating with Will Bowie, who's been working with our former developer on the Town Center project. We got our official results, I mentioned it to you. They've looked at it, they've met, they're analyzing it, they're still very interested. Probably their biggest concern right now was left traffic movement into the site, because as the DOT improvements stand right now, it's right in, right out from where like Depot Street is, and that's really the only entrance from 25. So they want to look at their other store locations and get some idea of what percentage of customers coming in are turning left into their stores or into their developments versus, right in and right out. So they're running some data with the traffic consultant, and they come back and look. I'm not saying that's going to kill their interest. They're very interested. Good news was that was their biggest concern on it, not cost of some of these other improvements. Because they, at least Will's opinion, it's not too bad now what DOT's come back with as far as mitigation improvements. So that's what's happening. I should hear back from them fairly soon, and then we sit down and talk about what DOT is going to require, and can we get an agreement back together with them if it still fits right for both sides. So that's what's going on with that. And unless there's any questions on that, the next thing I wanted to mention, I'm sorry I got a long list here, that we could move some of this into an agenda item. We need to, the noise complaints from I-26, so Wildwood neighborhood and sound barriers. DOT is doing a new sound study. I think I emailed you on some of this. They're doing a sound study evaluation. Should have the results in June and then present that back. So that is underway. I'm sure the residents should be happy about that. Hopefully it'll be favorable. I think it should to support sound barrier walls, but.
Chuck McGrady mentioned that at our last Henderson County TAC meeting, and he said one thing that really surprised him was from, they started the construction and they didn't hear from anybody. He brought it up like I did, and nobody really said anything. And then now all of a sudden they get a list of long complaints.
Yeah.
Hopefully because they cleared the trees and everything.
Yeah, I'm sure people in there,
I think it just took somebody over there to get organized. Up front, nobody was organized.
I think they just thought that maybe some of the trees would be left, and they were mature trees, and none were left. It's totally cleared out. And then, so they shouldn't be surprised. Pardon?
They were a good buffer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They tore it up.
So that's underway. We've heard from a lot of residents. Maybe it takes just, I'll pick on one of them, resident, Mr. Brown and David Brown. He's emailed me about a lot of things, and kind of some of that catalyst is somebody getting that going. And so, because I was surprised we hadn't heard more from people, just in general, when that was all underway. Last thing, our street resurfacing, so Hawks Nest and Sandpiper Court, that's underway. Hopefully be finishing most of that work, from last week into this week. And then Thursdays, they're planning to go over to Kate's Park to do the walking trail, to redo that, and then they'll be done. So far, it's going fine, and that's all I've got at this point.
Any questions? Any questions for Mark? Is there any more business from the council? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjourning say aye. Aye. Those opposed? We are.